Welcome to episode 6.
6?
This is 6. Ooh, we've run out of fingers on one hand. We are moving to the second hand.
We're on the second hand.
I have a new look.
Yeah.
Which, if we were in the middle of a TV series, I'd be... Not that that's a thing, but yeah. I'm my own good twin now. Yeah. Well, the reason why is I had to get a part-time job to... keep things going at home, make sure the bills are paid, while this creative thing is stewing,
growing,
brewing,
simmering.
Patreon.com, you can find the link below. If you're listening to the podcast, it's in the show notes, and please feel free to become a sponsor. And if you can't afford it, that's fine. Make sure that you let people know that we're out there.
Yeah.
Rate us on iTunes, like us on Facebook, the whole 9 yards. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate it. Okay, so today, just to start off, I have a dirty joke.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, my dirty joke is this. Americans are famous as very kind of prudish people.
Yeah, a little bit.
And yet we invent something called the fleshlight.
Right.
For those who don't know, it is a handheld peripheral for men. That, women have dildos and men have fleshlights. And you can imagine how that works. I listened to this comedian, Jimmy Dore, who's really funny, and he goes, and I'm proper attribution, right? He says, so I bought one of those. I didn't like it. And they're like, why not? Tasted like plastic.
Okay.
So, sorry. My part-time job, this is Japan. They're a little bit conservative. I wanted to nail it and get the job. It's a good deal. I only have to work on Saturdays and Tuesday mornings, and it's pretty generous. So, being Japan, wanting to be a clean-cut teacher, I shaved off. So I'm teaching English again, a little bit. And where am I teaching? The YMCA. Yeah. Like ad-libbing, right? Yeah.
They actually pray at these YMCAs.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah.
Do they really? See, I'm like, I'm taking money from Christians. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
But I actually was wondering, because, as you're waiting and alone with your thoughts on the train as you're going to this place and imagining what the interview questions might be, I was like, are they going to ask me about my faith? Is that a thing? Luckily, Japan is so super secular. The second most atheist country in the world. China, and then Japan. Yeah. So happily, I don't think that would be an issue. I'd be shocked. But I feel, my personal perception is that when Japanese do get religious, they're like super religious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They come up with weird religions too. There's a new one. There's this movie actress who's kind of went off the grid at the age of 22, and she says she's going to dedicate herself to her religion called Happy Science.
What is that? Some sort of...
I guess, it's one of those homegrown Japanese religions that apparently started in the 80s, and she's been a member since she was young.
Happy Science.
And it's called Happy Science.
I've got nothing for that. I don't even know. Well, I wish I knew. Do I wish I knew? I knew more about it. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. Religion's another show.
Yeah, religion's another show. Okay. And not to bury the lead, by the way, I should acknowledge this is International Women's Day in the United States. For us, it's a day later, but This is when we record. So, of course, I start off with a dirty joke about fleshlights. Yeah, I'm a horrible person. I have no sense of, as my wife says, TPO, time, place, occasion. I have no sense of any of those.
Please keep listening.
But I hope the women can appreciate the joke as well. I mean, it was meant in good fun. It's a dirty joke is a dirty joke,
right?
The thing is that it's interesting that this year, because of Trump becoming president, as my friend Gary says, now that we live in the darkest timeline, it's a comic book reference, that people have become so much more aware of minority rights. I think I actually have started to decide that Trump becoming president is a good thing, insofar that I've been saying for years that people need to wake up, that we become apathetic. I think since college, I felt like, wow, people are really apathetic.
Yeah.
And I took political science in college, and they said, well, we're due for a party realignment. And so I am surprised that it's 20 years later that it actually happened, that it took 20 years, but here we are. And I think we're finally seeing it. And I was saying to you before we started recording that now it's like we have two parties that are largely inconsequential insofar that they're divided, because it's basically you've got the moderate right, which are the Democrats, and the far right, which are the Republicans. and it's like the Republicans are the Harlem Globetrotters, and the Democrats are the Washington Generals. And if you don't know who the Harlem Globetrotters are, or that reference, the idea is that it's a fun, basically, what would you call it? There's like a trick team, a display team.
Oh, the Generals?
No, the
Harlem Globetrotters?
It's a performance. It's basketball performance art, right? Yeah. Really.
That's exactly what I'd call it, basketball performance art.
They've been around forever.
I mean, that would be
right?
The 1920s.
Are you serious?
Abe Saperstein.
Holy crap. I had no idea. Because, I mean, as a kid, I was like watching Scooby-Doo, and they're like, this week, the Harlem Globetrotters joined
they've been around for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, I mean, basketball was kind of new, and the NBA was, I don't know if the NBA was an actual entity yet, but the Globetrotters were traveling performers. The founder, if I'm not mistaken, his name was Abe Saperstein. And he said, well, this sport is popular, more or less. And it lends itself to, basketball, it lends itself to that kind of an entertainment. Kind of stuff they do,
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, performance art baseball? That'd be...
Wow. Well, actually, it might actually be.
It might work. I mean, more creative people than I. They launched some...
Well, I would imagine,
They've launched musicals based on less. So, like...
Well, I mean, I guess
Spider-Man, what was it? Turn Off the Dark, which actually involved a lot of Spider-Man dying. So
I remember seeing commercials for He-Man on Ice. So
oh my god!
I mean, it was in the 80s, right?
Can you imagine if the guy actually had to be an honest to god bodybuilder rather than wearing some kind of goofy He-Man, muscle suit? What would happen if you slipped and fell on the ice? Oh, that would hurt so bad.
Yeah,
oh, geez,
pretty bad.
So anyway, back to making fun of the Democrats. Now, I'm a progressive, and I really wish that voting didn't feel like a waste of time. They said that we've gotten to the point now where the average voter, like literally 90% of the population, a.k.a. what we consider, people at our level, not the rich or the super rich, their vote plays no statistical role in policy decisions anymore. Doesn't matter. Now, at this point, it doesn't matter. If you're not a donor... and we're talking with, 5 zeros after it. Yeah. You don't count. So that's why things are kind of going down the toilet, because it's a few people wanting to add just that little bit. It's like, I think it's like, it's trying to get like the high score on an old arcade machine. Because, like, for example, they want to get rid of Obamacare, and they're now rolling out their new plan. Which is ironic because, as everybody knows, the old plan was their plan. And now they're just basically trying to go back to the bad old days, back to square one. And the main result is going to be a $3 trillion tax break for the upper, is it 0.1%? You have to be, now this is over years, but it comes out to $200,000 a year if you make $4 million or more a year.
Unbelievable.
Which is a 0.3% tax break. The tax break for everybody else is 0%. Matter of fact, the actual impact on your income is going to be a decrease in usable income of between 5 to 7%. So it's a tax on everybody else. And now
it's a tax on everybody else.
One of the other things they want to do is now they're saying we've got to repair the infrastructure. Now, the infrastructure itself is supposed to cost if we did everything right away, would be $3 trillion.
What are they repairing?
The whole, I mean, the bridges, roads, everything across the country.
That's what they're calling it, repairing.
Infrastructure repair. It's been like had been trying to push it.
Right.
He had his bill and everything, and it was over 10 years. He would spend, say, $3 trillion, for example. Right. Not all at once, obviously. Now they're saying they're going to privatize the repair and turn everything into toll roads. This kind of goes back to your, for example, about gun control.
The United States of New Jersey.
Oh my God!
Have you ever driven through New Jersey?
I've heard it's bad. I've driven through. Well, Illinois is pretty bad.
Should say the toll booth state.
Illinois and Oklahoma both are heavily tolled.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know about Oklahoma.
Oklahoma has 3 freeways. I want to say 35, 40, and 44. Mm-hmm. I think 35 and 40 are not tolled, and 44 is partially tolled.
I think 35 can't be tolled. It's federal.
Right. But 44, I don't know. It's like, I think, I want to say there's a stretch of it that is, well, I guess it can't be either because it'd be federal, right? But there's a lot of turnpikes in Oklahoma. Well, now the good news is that, a lot of the turnpike money goes to the reservations in the area.
Okay, fair enough.
Because there's a fun history fact. Fun history fact. The Native Americans on the Trail of Tears got shipped from Georgia to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Okay, they were called the 5 civilized tribes. Now, there's a lot of other tribes in Oklahoma too, but yeah. And the United States dumped them all into Indian territory. Now, of course, there was all the famous culture of cowboys and cattle drives, starting in Texas and parts south, and going to they would want to drive the cattle once a year to Kansas City mm-hmm. to ship to butcher and ship to all points east, and they'd have to cross Indian territory. And the Native Americans, well, I don't mean it offensively, so pardon me if I go back and forth, would I want to say they charged each other 1 or 2 cents a head to cross the territory.
That's a lot.
Which comes out to a lot of money. This is back in the day, right? So pretty awesome. And now they own the turnpike. I want to say they own the turnpikes. I'm pretty sure that if it crosses the reservation, obviously treaties are in place. It means that they have to get a certain amount of that money. But they're still letting the white man come through and charging them for it, which I think is pretty awesome. It's got a certain poetic justice to it. So anyway, I mean, the way that the current system we have works is they are privatizing profit and socializing loss. And that's, for example, the bank bailout in 2008. In other words, too big to fail. Right. Make no mistake that as likable as he was, Obama was a corporatist. Mm. You know, but I've been, if you're wondering where I'm getting all this from, I've been watching the Young Turks a lot. Or listening to him while I work at home. And one of the things I learned is basically the Democratic Party as it stands now kind of went to hell in a handbasket with Clinton back in 1992 when they started saying, you know what, we're going to jump into bed with the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because the Koch brothers, if you are like a conservative, you know the name Soros, and that's your, almost sounds like Sauron. There you go. It's your evil overlord billionaire who likes to pay for progressive things, which he doesn't really, but he's a humanitarian. But, you know, most liberals have never heard his name either, unless you actually pay attention to politics. And then on the conservative side, you have the Koch brothers, which most conservatives haven't heard of, unless you think of like Citizens United and all Heritage Foundation, all of these things that they fund so that they can basically funnel money in without their names being on it. Anyway, so by the way, they funded both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's campaigns. Because from their point of view, it's like, you know, whatever horse wins. Now, the reason why they weren't happy, well, I should say they donated to the Republican Party. They don't like Trump because he's an obnoxious jerk and also because he has no loyalty. And I'm sure that, you know, they realize that, you know, he will, I don't know if you pay him enough, he'll do it for you, but he's kind of such a loose cannon. I think they're just worried about what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but enough about that. So the thing is that I'm optimistic that despite the fact that the Democrats are still tone deaf and have no platform, that millennials are starting to get involved. There's movements out there. There's a campaign to get Bernie Sanders to run for president There's a new group called the Justice Democrats, which you can go online, check out, that is trying to start primary, what they call corporate Democrats, basically the moderate right Democrats, primary against them to get like real, actual, kind of more traditional Democrats or progressive Democrats into office. And
Right.
I mean, the Democratic Party's wiped out at this point. We're down to like less than 20% representation across the states. It's insane. I say we, I mean, as in people who aren't the Republicans.
Right.
So anyway, so here's hoping that people are out there and getting up in the grill of their representatives. So
Well, now we got to wait for 2018, provided that the whole thing isn't all blown up by that point.
we haven't started World War III yet. Apparently, even Moscow is starting to distance themselves from Trump.
They're like, oh, really?
What did we do? Well, what they really wanted to do was to what they consider break the liberal bloc of the West, which they've succeeded in doing at this point. I mean, you got like conservative, like far-right candidates for president in France, and of course now you got the United States is going to the far right, and other countries will follow.
As a quick aside, I've seen this before, and I'd always been concerned, when I was teaching in New York, and I'd see these same behaviors, and I always thought they were a microcosm of what's to come. I say this is the way it is, so this is the way it's got to be. This is what I say I see, so that's got to be what's really happening.
You mean anecdotal? Or people like just basically they reach a conclusion.
And I think this is bad because this is what's going on. And I'm like, well, that's not what's happening. And they're like, well, yes, it is. And I'm talking about people who are not
talking about a confirmation bias. Like you pick a conclusion and then you selectively see all of the things that match that conclusion and filter out everything else.
Right.
Which is what the internet has really exacerbated, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they, in my view, we had a principal who was generally respected by the teachers, highly respected by the students, even though he played fair. Mm-hmm. So he was summarily dismissed and replaced with, I'd say the same thing now. I mean, essentially a Trump-type person.
Sure.
Narcissistic. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. Rearrange his office once or twice a week.
Why?
And then call in people that he respected. What do you think? I'm like, aren't you the principal? So, and of course he went overboard and redecorating his office, and everything was about him. And then he would do some of these things that he was told to do. And that's why he was hired. Mm-hmm. Well, are you gonna listen? Are you gonna do it? And I've kind of seen that here too. But it was just a microcosm of what's happening now. And then after a while, when things got ridiculous and he was completely out of control, I saw people that would cozy up to him. Just like we see now.
That's the part that always baffles me. I mean, there's
because people are like, well, I remember someone looked at me and they said, well, Cece, but he's okay with me. And I said, yeah,
look out for number
what
one.
He's doing. You're right. I said, why are you a school teacher in a public school? I said, I don't even know what your motivation is for doing this, unless, Anyway, but I'd see this, and then I'd see government kind of sort of echo that. And so, if you look and at your local, when people are now starting to understand that their local politics lend their attitude and such to, eventually it grows. It becomes some sort of a national thing. And people say, where'd all this come from? Well, you know, these things just don't start at the top and trickle down. I mean, they can, but, you know, it's like trickle down economics. They're just, come on.
Well, you enable, I mean, I think in government particularly, a person who actually wants to be in government for all the right reasons, you know, eventually, you know, they'll start and go into government and have like high moral standards and high ideals. I mean, you can even go back and look at like Mitch McConnell, for example, at his original like personal platform when he started out versus what he is now, which is a total shill and I'm the worst of the worst. I'm sorry, and this is not even like he's the worst of the worst. If he was in a part of the, you know, the party that I related to either way, I'd just be like, this guy's horrible. I mean, he's obstructionist and he's self-serving and he's just evil, you know. But the thing is, but he's not a good person. That's the thing. He started out though, if you look at like back in the day, he was like pro-union, for example, pro like workers, you know, like pro minimum wage being you know, increased and so on. So, but power and money. And especially, goes back to the 70s when we said corporations are people, and that was the beginning of the end.
Right.
And that corporations are people, and then it was, I want to say, was a Citizens United case. I want to say it was in 2011, quite recent, right? Is when they said that donations are free speech. Money is free speech, which actually is kind of ironic. If you think about it this way, that means that if you are... I heard this analogy. If you're negotiating the affections of a woman using currency, you're just talking to her.
Just talking to her, right?
Did you pay that woman? Did you pay her for prostitution? No, I'm just talking.
No, we were just talking.
Yeah.
I talked.
And she listened.
Right. I used 500s, and that has meaning.
Yeah. Those are my words.
These are my words.
It's just...
How about that?
What
happens if you go to a strip club and you make it rain? What kind of talking is that? Is that like... Oops.
Oh, that's okay. We're going to work this out.
Yeah, what's that? Yeah, eventually.
This is all new.
So what,
I hope you enjoy it, by the way.
Is that one another aside? Like...
Yeah, what is that? Is that
free speech?
Is that shouting to the crowd?
Yeah, I'm trying to like,
round of applause?
Make that a metaphor.
It's like, this is the thing that baffles me. And I mean, I'm sure that liberals, I think, are very straightforward and then they use platitudes. I say liberals, I say the Democratic Party in this particular case. I'm not saying liberals. The Democratic Party, as politicians nowadays, they have all their platitudes, but not a lot of substance, which is why they lost. Why won't people turn out to vote? Why are people voting independent? Not because they're apathetic, which is what I originally thought, not because they're lazy, not because even you could argue that, of course, like the voter ID, push for voter ID legislation, which is total BS. I mean, you can go back, and by the way, there's video footage from back in the 80s when the Republicans were saying, we have to find a way to keep these people from voting. The reason why why Nixon made marijuana illegal was to target his political political opponents, which were... as he called them, the hippies and I don't know what was the other group was, but basically, the blacks.
Yeah.
You know? And so he's like going, if we make marijuana illegal, people who basically will vote against me or protest against me get locked up. Awesome. Which is also one of the reasons why Jeff Sessions is pushing to make the federal government come down harder on marijuana. Again, non-violent...
Because it worked the first time.
It worked the first time.
It's all gone.
Well, not only that, and then
it just came back because of Obama.
And magically. Do you know, by the way, fun fact about marijuana is the only drug you cannot overdose on.
Right.
You cannot OD on marijuana.
The effective to lethal dose for marijuana, my brother did a research paper on that in college. As part of an economics project. And for instance, effective to lethal. So they kind of standardized everything. And so cocaine was 1 to 11. 1 dose will get you high, 11 will kill you.
Wow.
Alcohol was 1 to 15. You know, I mean, again, they had to standardize it, but what's the proof and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Heroin was maybe 1 to 10. And
I think it'd be lower. It's
and
pretty
marijuana was 1 to 40,000.
One of the another fun fact about marijuana is the chemical in marijuana is THC.
Yeah.
That makes you feel good. It naturally occurs in the human body. Mm-hmm. And the human body, it's not a poison. The human body also has a system in place that actively seeks out and breaks it down. So, alcohol turns into some really nasty stuff in the process of going from alcohol to sugar and being eliminated from the body. That, like, the halfway point, the chemicals in between are really, really...
Yeah, it's kind of...
It's why you feel so...
people's livers go...
It's like if your liver starts hurting, But, you feel good by ironically poisoning yourself. And then tobacco, it's all about the nicotine, which, I don't think nicotine to me is like, whatever. I know it deadens your emotions, which I guess is kind of why people get into it and keep coming back. But I'm guessing the major...
You want to know why poor people smoke cigarettes, and I'm like...
Because it makes it less painful to be alive, kind of thing. So the thing is, the result being is that I think the major hazards of tobacco are the smoke and all the nasty extras, not the nicotine itself, right? Nicotine, I don't know. For me, as a chemical, I'm
like... having a problem with it when they were just drying it and smoking it.
But when you industrialize it, then when you commercialize an industry, then you make it really, gnarly and
processed food, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
fake cheese.
Yeah. If you ever go on YouTube, there's some fun clips done by John Oliver's show last week tonight. Mm-hmm. He has a really great clip where he talks about a segment where he talks about tobacco companies. The reason why they largely kind of like took a step back and got really passive in America after basically the fallout of, the late 90s, when they finally said, yep, guess what? After 30 years of paying scientists to tell you that tobacco is okay, it's actually not. Yeah. And it's like, well, and they basically said, okay, and they keep selling cigarettes, but it looks like they kind of just, rolled up the mat and went home. But what they've actually done is they've pivoted and are now targeting third world countries.
Right.
And the best part is, if those third world countries, any particular country, tries to legislate, I think there was a country in Africa, and again, go watch the piece. I can link to it. There was a country in Africa that wanted to fight back and pass legislation, at least like regulating it, and the tobacco company sued them. And the war chest of the tobacco company was more than the GDP of that country. What are they going to do? I mean, they literally could just buy the country.
So I get it. I'm not going to even ask the question. No.
But I mean, so basically, they said they've globalized. They've moved those jobs overseas, or they moved their customers overseas. So it is what it is. I mean, not to get...
Well, I'm going to tell you this, too. I mean, we talk about industrializing or whatever. I remember and even here in Japan right now, there's you can still get synthetic marijuana, and it's not illegal.
Really?
Now, of course, it's responsible for deaths. Mm-hmm. And I remember I tried it once.
How was it?
Horrible.
Is this the stuff? Wait, is this the stuff the government has been cracking down on recently? It's kind of like this weird...
maybe. Yeah.
There's some kind of weird...
I didn't go buy.
Basically, I don't know, the drug equivalent of clove cigarettes that is some kind of weird mix of herbs that...
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, they call it legal herb. Is the Japanese are that legal herb.
Yeah.
So, somebody said, we're here. And I went, well, I've had my experiences. So, I mean, how bad can it be? And see, this is where critical thinking should really, rule it. Again, I'm like, well, it's legal, so it won't kill me, right? I took what? I don't know, 4 puffs, 2 pass, and then 2 pass. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, I got dizzy. And not good dizzy, not fun dizzy, not spinning around like I drank too much, too fast. Or,
right.
It wasn't vomit-inducing, but it wasn't pleasant. I don't want to do it anymore.
Sounds kind of like the smoking equivalent of like happoshu.
I got punched in my brain.
You ever had happoshu, by the way? Happoshu. It's the cheap beer in Japan. Okay,
you mean like malt liquor?
Malt liquor.
Yeah.
Japan has its own malt liquor. Again,
It's just like it.
oh God, we're talking since we're on this whole drug thing. When I first got here, I was 26 years old, and it turns out when you're younger, your palate is a little bit more forgiving. I get pickier as I get older.
Sophisticated.
Yeah, I get pickier as I get older. But the good news is that being 26 years old, having the constitution of a person in their 20s, and having an unsophisticated palate. I mean, hey, to be fair, I started drinking beer in Germany at 16.
Right.
Where it was legal and it's the good stuff. Happoshu, or sorry, the malt liquor, it's called happoshu in Japan. When I came here, I thought it wasn't that bad. I was pretty impressed. And I didn't actually really realize what it was. And the interesting thing is the reason why Japanese invented malt liquor was to get around the horrendous taxes they put on beer here.
Right.
Highest taxation rate in the world, 40 cents on the dollar. Insane.
It's insane.
Absolutely insane. So,
I ain't selling it. I told you that.
Yeah, you basically don't make any money off
No.
it. So
it's like, give me a beer. I'm like,
yeah, it sucks because I love beer. And it doesn't, and because the Japanese government likes that tax, they're not going to lower it. And it's the most popular beverage in the country despite its cost. So it's insane. So they invent malt liquor. Sorry, just to finish. They invent malt liquor because the way the tax is calculated is based on the hops content. And malt liquor is not made with hops.
No.
Therefore, it's not subject to the same taxes. Right. But it's also what I like to call nowadays headache in a can.
oh man.
Just
now for those of you who are watching who may know me, and I've had it. I've had my share of malt liquor, and quite frankly, it's the aftertaste.
Oh God, I know it's so skunky. Right?
I'm like, wait a minute, okay, it was all right like 3 seconds ago, and now it's lingering on my palate, and I don't like this.
It's like a skunk died in your mouth. It's like a skunk rolled in garbage, then developed like amoebic dysentery, and
it was so bad. I mean, I had it here, and someone said, "Well, this is a really cheap beer," and so I looked at it and I took a sip, and for that first 2-3 seconds, I said, "Well, it tastes like beer." I thought it was another kind of fake beer.
Right.
And then that familiar burgeoning funk in your mouth.
That?
It's a good question.
Chemistry. I will say this.
That's a good question. If you know, write us and tell us what makes that. Because it's distinctive to malt liquor. All of them.
Maybe it's in the word malt. I don't know.
Well, malt just refers to at least the first part of the brewing process. But
there's nothing with the word malt in it that I actually enjoy eating, including malt balls.
Really?
Yeah, I never liked them. They just taste, it's not my thing. But for some reason, that word
I love that stuff.
Really? Yeah.
Like a milkshake with malt powder?
Nah.
Taste is personal.
There you go.
So
it is funny. It is funny. Like, I always thought as a kid, they tell you that kids have more taste buds than adults do. So I assume that as I get older, that's the reason why adults are less picky. There's a really great book called, I think it was The Great Brain, where there's this whole, it's about a kid who's very, very smart, and there's this whole treatise in there about how he explains why adults don't understand that the reason why kids don't like vegetables is because they can taste more. And that adults just don't have any taste anymore, so
they
need whatever stimulation they can get. And yet, as I get older, it's like when I was in college, I could eat the 15-cent ramen you get at the grocery store, and it was okay, and it was good. And then you come to Japan, and you have your first taste of instant cup ramen. You're like, that's amazing. And then you go to a real ramen restaurant, and you think you died and gone to heaven. Matter of fact, there is one called Tenka Ippin, which I think literally means like the bowl of heaven, or like the under heaven. So pretty cool, right? And then you go back to even just your regular cup ramen, and you're like, meh. Yeah, you just kind of work.
I won't eat it anymore.
But hey, to be fair, ramen in Japan, I mean, the good stuff is not like ridiculously expensive. So it's not like I'm being snobby. But like I said, same thing with alcohol too. So there you go.
Right. I mean, it was anybody, but I would imagine that's the
Once you move beyond the
everything.
salt and ketchup phase.
well, right. I mean, but people get used to all kinds of things. They're like, okay, people get used to fine jewelry. They don't want the cheap stuff anymore.
Yeah. Now you
People
know
get
why it's nice.
Good, nice clothes. They want, the first time. I mean, I've never, not yet. But from what I understand, it's just people the first time they have a custom made suit and they put it on, they're literally willing to throw everything else in the garbage.
I can see that. Yeah.
They won't even look at pictures of themselves not in that suit.
Wow.
Well, I mean, that's a severe reaction.
Someday
but
Donald Trump is going to discover custom-made suits. Someday.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, we're still waiting.
He's a cretin.
He is. The man eats.
Well done steak with ketchup.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some people like ketchup, but
Don't
I
get me wrong, if I was
guarantee you that in
and if
this
it was a
man's
well done
case,
steak, I'd use ketchup.
You would use
Behind-
ketchup?
If it was a well done
well,
steak.
it's like the hoity-toity, like aged meat, et cetera, et cetera. It's supposed to be a really good steak,
Oh, and he wants that well done.
and then he puts ketchup on it. I'm telling
Oh
you,
well,
man.
no. I've had a 45-day dry aged steak, and that's a thing of beauty.
And then he puts ketchup.
That's
on
an
it.
opera on a plate.
And then he puts ketchup on it. The man has no taste.
I mean, I know.
He has taste in women. Well, I wouldn't even say he has taste in women. Obviously, he marries beautiful women. But the reason why I say he doesn't have taste in women is I think that he basically said, I'm just going to marry a woman if she's an Eastern European supermodel.
That's it.
It's like he checks it off a list. I eat steaks because they're fancy. I have a
Yeah,
gold
it's more the
toilet because
reputation,
gold
so,
is
yeah,
fancy.
more than the person.
I want the best of everything. I want to be able to say it's the best, but he doesn't know why it's the best.
No.
He only cares that it is the best.
Well, that's his whole thing about him being incurious.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And
Who knew healthcare was hard?
idiot.
So anyway, by the way,
To think out loud.
did you hear that he got mad at he had his moment of sun in front of Congress where everybody's saying, "Oh, he finally turned presidential," and he was so tickled. And then the Jeff Sessions scandal came out, and he got mad.
Yeah.
Now, did he get mad that Jeff Sessions talked to the Russians? He got mad because he stole his spotlight. Apparently, he had a fit.
That's who runs the country. A person.
What have
who's-
we done?
Well, I can't say that America's done this before. I think. I mean, presidential historians.
Thomas Jefferson apparently slandered John Adams in the press by saying
Right.
he was
There was that.
like a hermaphrodite. But mudslinging aside,
Right.
he was an intelligent man who did good things. So, that's one thing. But apparently there has been, but as far as basically electing a cretin, like Calvin Coolidge would be, I think, the closest example to a do-nothing president.
Right.
In terms of somebody who the Republican Congress is happy to have him in place because he can sign things.
Right. Yeah.
And then
He
he'll
can
basically
sign
sign
it, right.
anything goes across his desk. That's all they actually were quoted as saying that. I think Paul Ryan said that a few years ago, that basically if the next person could sign stuff, they'd be happy. And they got him. But the thing is that I don't think they expected the chaos and instability, which comes from the man doesn't realize that he's the president of the country. So he's like
No, he
going,
doesn't realize.
I heard through, he didn't say who, but he heard through Breitbart that
Right.
Obama wiretapped his phone. It's like, you run the CIA, you run the FBI. You could just ask them.
How about picking up the phone?
Did you guys wiretap me? No? Okay.
Well, even if it's not that simple,
Obviously, yeah.
but
he's a goob.
yeah, he's a goob. He's a goob.
He's your 70-year-old grandpa who sits there and has like a couple of peanuts in his pocket for when he gets hungry. Who you can't take out to the theater anymore because he says, "Why are those black people up there?"
None of my grandparents, even when my father's mother was obviously suffering a little bit, You know, when she was out of touch, she was out of touch.
Right.
She was there, but it was no, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can't, right.
Yeah.
You know.
I can't right now. I gotta say,
I'm sorry, Ghana.
Let's
right.
weather the storm. Let's hope that.
Right.
Honestly, I hope he gets impeached because
Well, he
we
might
can't
be happy
handle.
about it.
Huh?
He
might be. Actually, apparently, Howard Stern went on.
Did you
record.
say this? He goes, "Yeah, I said that." You know.
Well, Howard Stern apparently went on record saying he's been friends with Donald Trump for years, and he actually would call him up and say, "Dude, what are you doing? You don't want to be the president. You're not going to like it." And he doesn't like it.
No,
he doesn't
he
like
doesn't
it.
like
It's
it
a lot
at
of
all.
work, and it's easy to say. You want to take a break and catch that, or
Yeah, let me
okay,
catch that.
I'll mark this.
So everybody's shocked because they thought that someone with I'm trying to figure out a way to describe his moral compass because he has one, but it's not.
He's incredibly loyal to his family. I'll give him credit for that. Apparently, Ivanka, his daughter, is not a terrible person, and compared to him, it's a low bar. But he says she always
Step over
encourages
that.
me to do the right thing, which, first of all, why are you tempted to do the wrong thing?
right.
But second of all,
Pretty
it's
much admitted,
good.
yeah.
It speaks well of her, and apparently even his son-in-law is not a horrible person either. So I say horrible again, low bar, but I mean, but he has at least a few people around him that he cares about their feelings, and that impacts him, and that he is loyal to. I mean, he's loyal to his sons, obviously, because they're running the company, and he trusts them, which is keep it in the family. So, insofar as his tribal instinct, that seems to be in place.
But when you get somebody like this, and again, I likened it to that one principal I had who, you can say you're for this and you can say you're for that, and you can say all the right things in an interview. You can also say that, of course, you'll support. People can ask you in an interview or in this case, just in general, are you for us? And they can say, yes,
Right.
I will support you. And if your agenda is flaky, and has some questionable morals in terms of the good of everyone,
Yeah.
then why are you surprised when this person goes off the rails and they start feathering their own nest and casting about, trying to figure out where they can find the most influence,
Right.
or when they're out of control. You hire a rat. You hired a rat.
You hired what?
A rat.
Yeah, basically. I mean, well,
I need a rat to go and do this dirty work. And then they do that dirty work, and then they're still looking for more dirty work because they're a rat.
Yeah, and it's the fox and the scorpion story.
Right.
You are what you are. So that's the thing about it. I'm not surprised at what Trump is doing because he's always been consistent.
Yeah.
His history is well documented. So I feel sorry for Trump supporters who honestly believed him and still believe in him, which is impressive. I mean, sure, it's early days.
Yeah.
There has not enough time has passed except for the executive orders that he signed. No significant legislation has passed yet. So, they're now first shots have been fired with basically they're going to gut the EPA. They're going to gut it's not a National Science Foundation, but something similar where they've literally taken the science out of it.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting. There is evidence that shows that when we eliminated lead from gasoline 22 odd years ago, I say odd years, I think it's about 20 years ago. I know that much. I think it's 22. Here's how this works. If you look at when they eliminated lead from gas and then move 22 years in the future, they show statistics down to a city block level showing that crime rates dropped significantly based on their exposure to lead. Now, there's obviously many factors that can do this, but lead has been shown to both retard intellectual development, or literally like brain development, and to create aggression in humans, violence. So if you look at all the EPA stuff he's rolling back now, he's saying you can have mercury vaporized in the air, you can have lead in everything. They're going to get rid of the good neighbors rules, which means that states can't pollute other states, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can dump coal in water now. That's okay. If 22 years from now we see a spike in violent crime, we're going to be able to say, well, there's another point of data to show that, pollution is bad. Just say that.
Part of the hallmarks of being a true adult is the ability to learn and the ability to be autodidactic, where, okay, everybody knows right from wrong because of pain.
You mean like self-correcting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you got to self-correct, but I mean, in that you got to be willing to learn.
Sure.
And I'm looking at people and I'm like, okay, you're going to keep defending Trump. You're going to keep waiting for him. And I mean, we see these kinds of situations again, we see microcosms of these all the time.
Oh man, we had
with
that
our friends and relatives.
Yeah.
And
I told you my own personal experience with the Board of Education a few years ago.
Right.
Oh my goodness, that was a thing.
Right. I'm trying to help a friend right now, and without getting into specifics, she wants a certain outcome for a situation that at some point was beneficial to her emotionally. She was in love with somebody. Mm-hmm. They ended up being not so wonderful.
Not so compatible.
Not really, not at all. And and so we talk, and she knows, and I see her semi-regular. She comes in,
mm-hmm.
and I'm getting to the point where I'm amazed at the tortured, twisted ways. I can't say with 100% certainty that they won't get back together, and it'll be just like it was. I can say with 99.9% certainty, and based on my own personal observations in life, either my own situations or my observations of others, I'd say it's more like 10%.
So I'm trying to follow the story. She had a relationship with somebody where she kind of talked herself into it. It didn't work out, but she's still convinced that she can make it work.
Yeah, and it's just no way.
That's kind of like the old abuse victim kind of thing.
Yes.
Where they try to say, well, it's obviously my fault kind of thing.
Well, that's this thing with Trump.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is.
Gaslighting. The word gaslighting. Yeah. I've learned many things this year, such as the word gaslighting and what it means, and that he tries to convince you that it's your fault.
Yeah.
Or when he sits there and he's like, grabbing your arm and hitting you in the face with your own hand, he's like, why are you punching yourself? Why are you punching yourself? That kind of thing. That guy. So,
but people have this thing where they think that they like, well, I was wrong, so I'm a failure.
Right.
And we forget, because now everything's edited.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see this podcast, it's going to be edited. But remember, one of those adages, I'll use a sports adage, is that, I want to see what, show me highlights of Michael Jordan, right? Okay. And you see all of these highlights, and he does these incredible things, right?
Yeah.
There's no highlights of him practicing. There's none of that. I'm sure there's some film of him practicing, but it's dry, and dusty, and not too much, exciting happens. But when you edit this, and so people
add a soundtrack,
and they see their real lives, and they forget that life is not one big highlight film.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, and Americans have really been sold on.
Keep running into this.
We're going to adjust this.
We'll
apologize.
that's
he's
partially
an
my
expressive
fault.
person,
My
and
foot
I am.
was itching. But yeah,
You're an expressive person, and I've hampered your airspace.
that's okay.
But anyway, Americans. First of all, we invented the phrase "the American Dream." We were the great experiment. We're unique in history, in that a whole bunch of people who either weren't wanted or were marginalized in their own countries ran away to America to find something better. And we also have a lot of our culture is strongly influenced by, like, the Puritans, for example, which is where we have our amazing obsession with both sex, which figures a lot into how we judge people, and also we equate wealth with as the logical conclusion of a good person working hard,
Right.
which nowadays is absolutely no longer the case.
Nope. Yeah.
I mean, pretty much. I mean, I can point to success stories, obviously. Steve Jobs, the son of a Syrian immigrant.
Yeah.
And you can look at, like, for example, a lot of the guys in Silicon Valley, CEOs. You can point your finger and 10 feet away, there's probably going to be somebody standing there who is a self-made man. Those are still very much the exception anymore,
Right.
and we hold them up, and that's great. But like a few years ago, they, like, Fox News and, like, the politicians who were, like, coming to talk on them or had their pundits were using the phrase, "Oh, in America we have the rich and the soon-to-be rich." And I gotta say, is this a Republican thing? They have so much newspeak; it is not even funny.
Yeah.
Like, Oklahoma is currently floating a bill to basically force Christian prayer in schools. And they're calling it the Religious Anti-Discrimination Act. And I'm like going, why do they invent these amazing terms when you read
Why would you want to do that?
Because, why would you want to? I mean, but you're literally, you're the majority, of the de facto majority. They can't stand the separation of church and state. But it's fine when you're in the majority because...
Yeah.
And also, you got to imagine, how much is New Orleans, like, I want to say, influenced relatively to the Bible Belt? Because Oklahoma is dead set in the middle, like, absolutely dead center. We are
Okay,
the buckle,
so yeah,
right?
oh yeah, no, New Orleans was the first sin city before Las Vegas even existed.
So
It was
you're kind of like an
gambling,
island of
it's a big
let's say
island.
secularism.
Yeah. I mean, because
Is
the
Louisiana
Catholics,
Yeah,
Southern
okay.
Louisiana is mostly Roman Catholic.
Yeah, but man, we got the Protestants and the evangelicals, the Southern
Right.
Baptists.
Well, they all come to New Orleans for their. They used to come to New Orleans for all of their conventions.
Yeah.
Well,
having a convention is one thing, but it's when you have
why
a
would you
ton
go
of...
to New Orleans to have a convention? Well,
Because
you're going to
they're
go there to,
friendly.
to help the heathens?
Oh, well,
I'm going to save the heathens? There's lots of stories in many churches and all over the South of people going to New Orleans and getting caught. Gambling, drinking.
that's the
looking
irony.
for hookers.
That's the irony of religious people.
Yeah, right.
They're talking about. There's this guy in Alabama who was being interviewed about. He is part of the city council, and he's fighting against the state legislature because the city council voted in Birmingham, Alabama. They voted to raise the minimum wage to $10.10, which is still not enough, but it's better. And the state legislature tried to vote it down. And here's the best part. The vote was divided along racial lines. It's Birmingham, mostly black.
Yeah.
And all the white people in the state legislature said, no, you can't raise the minimum wage. But why? Why can you not raise the minimum wage? Anyway, but the point is that he was being interviewed. And he's like going, we're the state that watches the most porn.
Of course.
And it's like them in Utah. And it's ironically two of the most deeply religious states watch the most porn. I don't have to tell you, man, just own it. Sex is a thing. We're animals we're sexual animals, I should say. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. But anyway, but going back to the I wanted to say the last thing I want to say about the whole failure of our current politics. First of all, we've mentioned before the whole team mentality is a mistake. And that's the other thing. You're saying people getting kind of lulled into a sense of complacency is partly because as long as my guy is in power, we're okay. Even if your guy is selling out to the same people that the other guy's selling out to, right?
Right.
Like,
I'm more comfortable getting screwed by somebody like me.
well, I mean, I found Obama as charming and likable as anybody else. He's a great face guy, but he's been corrupted by the system of. I say corrupted by the system. In other words, the systemic corruption of the corporate donor system that we're based on, like where you can't run an election, like you can't run a campaign without getting $50,000 contributions. It's just not possible.
Yeah, that's got to
anymore.
end.
That's got to end. That's why. So even if you're a good person, if somebody gives you $50,000, you're gonna kind of want to look out for that guy because you owe him. It's human nature, right? So the DAPL pipeline is a good example. Where he's like, well, let's just let it play for a few weeks to see how it works out. Whereas, meanwhile, militarized police are like hosing down people in sub-freezing temperatures and hitting them with tear gas and crap. And and it's just like, and oh, by the way, here I sent this to you yesterday. Sorry if it was too long to read, but there was a document has surfaced, the original DAPL memo that they sent to the Army Corps of Engineers, saying, "Here is our private." What is they have to do an assessment, and then it makes sense to let the company do the assessment per se. It makes sense because they're the ones who are proposing that they build the pipeline, so they should foot the bill for seeing if it's feasible. And there was two places where they could have crossed the river, and the one was north of. What is that town called? It's in North Dakota. There's one north of this town in North Dakota. It's like a common name. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they had this town north of that's basically, they said we check a 10-mile radius of this place where we could cross north of this town, and we feel that there's too much danger to the water resources of that area that would adversely affect minorities and people living in poverty. Turns out that area is 97% white and only 2% living in poverty. They moved downriver to a location that incidentally would be a much shorter distance and therefore much cheaper to use. They checked within a half-mile radius and said that there would be no problem with minorities and people living in poverty. 80 yards outside of this half-mile radius is the Standing Rock Tribe settlement, which is, by the way, one of the poorest communities in the country.
Of course.
Of course. And the best part is that apparently they said, yep, this is our assessment, and the Army Corps of Engineers just rubber stamped it, and that was it. They were done.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's sad, and it's just and they get away with it, and it's all about money. And the flip side, if you're sitting there saying, stupid Native Americans and their stupid reservations. I mean, first of all, it's all treaty land, and we've never honored that treaty. There's actually something like a ridiculous amount, like $2 billion gathering interest in a bank account that the tribe refuses to touch because the government basically said, we're going to buy this land from you if you take this money. And they said, we're not going to take your money.
Right.
Therefore, you don't buy the land.
Right.
And the government's like, well, we're taking it anyway. Because that's what we've always done. And like I said, if you don't, if you, I know that there's a lot of, the feelings are very polarized about when you get Native Americans involved, it turns into this whole thing. And
rightly so. I mean, in terms of
we're the immigrants in this case, and you can say, stupid liberals and these are weird immigrants.
No, but it's true.
But we keep taking their damn land. Okay, look at it from a legal point of view. It's eminent domain. Okay, you're going in and taking private citizens' land. And in Native Americans' case, we're essentially also basically going into a foreign country and taking their land, which is awesome. If you think Putin in Crimea was bad, and we're using militarized police against American citizens. It's a whole mess. And then, but here's the other, like I said, the flip side is screw the Native Americans and their stupid, homes, whatever. Go into Iowa on the other side of the river. The pipeline draws a diagonal line right across Iowa because it's the shortest distance between 2 points. And the government of Iowa gave the company, Energy Transfer Partners, they gave them the power of eminent domain. They gave a corporation the right to go into private citizens' homes and say, you can either let us buy you out, or we're going to take it and you get peanuts. And so that's the flip side. And nobody reported on it, just not reported on. But again, I can link to it too. There's a really great, with a soundtrack and nice highlight reel showing this investigative reporter that works for the Young Turks who went out and he talked to these people, and it's a tragedy, and it's just basically just people getting steamrolled. But when you start setting the precedent of giving private companies the right to seize people's land, I mean, it's like a bad Steven Seagal movie.
Yeah.
There's this coal mining movie. I can't remember the name of it, but it's Steven Seagal.
I kind of remember that. I don't know the name of it either.
It's the 80s, and Steven Seagal is coming in.
He had a pipeline movie too.
Oh, did he?
He's
defending people. He was the guy defending people. Yeah, he's Steven Seagal. Fun fact: he trained with my friend Mizawaki back in the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was his dojo, or his ex-wife's dojo's here in Osaka. Oh, and back in the day, we were talking about when my friend Mizawaki was in high school. Obviously, back before he said one day they went to the dojo. I was like, "Where's Steve?" Oh, he went off to America, so he's going to become a movie star. Oh, all right.
How about that?
Yeah, apparently worked out for the guy. But anyway, so one last thing. I'm guessing we should wrap up as we're running out of time. So it's International Women's Day.
So I tell you what,
per se.
Let's do this.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll be a little late, but we had been discussing before the show in pre-production.
We have pre-production.
Yeah, we have pre-production. The whole situation with the Beyonce.
Yeah, okay, Beyonce and Emma Watson.
But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Let's open with that the next time because I'm a feminist. So straight up, and I don't have a problem with what everybody's got a problem with. I mean, I don't see it. I think that, I don't care what you want to wear,
Well, I don't have a problem with this whole idea of a woman being admitting in public, as in flaunting that she is a sexual creature, somehow diminishes her power, her agency as a human being. Like, she is both powerful and sexy. I'm in. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I find super attractive in women and in my wife is the fact that she's intelligent.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, has
the best part.
Multiple interests and stuff like that. I mean, you tell me a woman has a PhD, I'm like, hello.
Yeah. Can I go talk to her?
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, one of the back in the day when I was, dating and trying to get to know a woman and say, what's your hobbies? If she said, shopping, I'm like, I mean, there was no point in continuing the conversation.
Taste is personal,
but I just.
Right. I think that it's not monolithic.
I'm not against women saying I like to shop. Good for you, right? But I mean, try a little harder,
or at least,
as far as
you like to shop and you have an intellectual pursuit. Great.
Yeah. Well, I just felt like I couldn't strike up a conversation. How can I relate to somebody whose only response was a one word? I'm a
food guy. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Cool.
And I like.
Maybe it's my lack of imagination.
No. I like tacos, and I like foie gras. I like. I've had some wonderful champagnes, and I'm not drinking malt liquor anymore. But I've had some inexpensive wines that are easy to drink, and I can appreciate all of that. Sure. I think that there's a certain complexity. And a certain embracing of intellectualism that I think is attractive.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their low brow and their high brow.
I think for me, to kind of step that back is to say that I'm not like a snob. I am turned on by people who kind of have multiple interests.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter at what level that is. You don't have to be like a genius. Just somebody who says, I'm just interested in so many things. And it kind of has a way of looking at the world where the world is interesting to them, and therefore that charm appealed to me.
Do you ask questions? Are you curious?
Right. At the same time, I once heard that there's like two types of men. The kind of man that like is jealous of his woman and tries to hide her and says, "Don't look at my girl." And then there's the kind of guy who's like going, "Yeah, look at my girl." And I'm that guy.
You're that
I'm
guy?
the second guy. I was like, "Yeah, she is good looking, isn't she?" Which
Don't look at my wife. Hey, look at my wife. Yeah.
So I mean, and CC doesn't talk about his wife that much on the podcast, but she's a lawyer. I mean, how cool is that? You cleaned up, man.
Well, I mean, and she doesn't like stupid men. So, even if I had a crisis and said I'm too stupid, I mean, she'd be like, no.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I've seen men who are quote unquote accomplished. Maybe they're
like Donald Trump.
Health professionals or people like that who've been interested in her, and she's like, no, he's stupid. He can't talk about anything. He doesn't have
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And she just uses the word stupid.
Wow.
She's
But
blunt,
again, I think that it's cool that people are aware. I will say, in speaking out on as a last thing for International Women's Day, two things. One is that new healthcare plan. They're trying to use it to defund Planned Parenthood.
They just won't quit, will they?
Okay, guys. For those of you who aren't aware, no federal aid since the Hyde Act of like 1975 or 76, I think. Since then, no federal money has ever been used for an abortion. The way Planned Parenthood actually typically gets funded is you go in for treatment and then they apply to get a reimbursement from Medicaid. And at that time, they have to say what the treatment was. So, defunding Planned Parenthood, which does things like screenings for sexual diseases, HIV, a lot of, I want to say, like women's issues, like I would
health concerns,
breast exams. They do it for men too.
Yeah.
But basically, since a lot of the country is having a hard time getting access to healthcare, they are a really great resource for people that can't just walk into any doctor and spend $500 just to say hello. So this is a disaster to defund something like that. And I do not know what it is, the boner that Republican Party has for getting rid of all social services.
Let's keep poor people sick and poor and unable to drag themselves out of whatever hole they're in unless they want to join the military.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going to... Yeah, well, while the equipment might be expensive, we're not going to pay for any of those benefits either. But and then finally,
their last gasp. I mean, the only thing they can do is go off and be a soldier, and at least they can get fed.
Right.
I mean, I think that this is. I mean, it's so obviously class based because straight up, they're not making abortions illegal. I mean, they can say, "Well, we're going to go overturn Roe versus Wade because we're Christians and blah blah blah." No. And even when abortion was illegal, people went and they had them anyway. And if you had money, you found a doctor with a sterile environment, and you had it done professionally. You didn't go into an alley with a coat hanger because you didn't have to,
or drink some horrible chemical, or something stupid. Try to punch me in the gut until I don't know. Horrible things.
Those kinds of things. But Planned Parenthood and other services made these things, made the same things that rich people were doing. Yeah. Right? They made them available to people so that, in whether it be healthcare or whatever, so that they could go on and live their lives and be productive.
If you want
and that's
people,
what this prevents.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want people to, for example, if you actually wanted to make abortion illegal, then you need to... People say, it's all about accountability and we got to stop murder. Okay, then the people who are pushing for that need to accept the accountability since this is a society. And you're essentially saying people who are theoretically anti-abortion people tend to be conservatives. Conservatives are supposed to be small government. This is big government. When you tell people how to live their lives and you legislate it, a matter of fact, a lot of the coded speech I heard about why people didn't like Obama was that he was telling people how to live their lives, which was code for they didn't like the fact that gays were allowed to get married, and they didn't like the fact that businesses weren't allowed to discriminate based on their firmly held religious beliefs, and they didn't like the fact that person who was born with a penis wanted to go into the ladies' bathroom because they identify as a female. And by the way, if you equate sex with a bathroom, what is wrong with you?
Right.
Oh my God! I mean, anyway,
people who've had sex in bathrooms go,
yeah,
I'm
it's
not
not
proud of
no.
that.
And matter
But
of
I
fact,
did it. Right.
you're only, by the way, you're only hiding the problem because there is a lot of horrible. Like there are rapes and sexual abuses that go on in bathrooms now. You're not solving the problem. You're just removing what you consider your personal ick factor. So the thing is that if you're going to say all lives are important, then one, you need to have a system in place to make sure that mother gets support for that child, which may up to and including supplying adoption. If you say she has to take responsibility, you do too, because you're telling her how to live her life.
Yeah.
You need to be able to supply her with some either financial support or ensure that she doesn't lose her job, for example, because she has a child, or that she's not able to get a job, or that she can finish her higher education. Matter of fact, while we're at it, since we're adding $54 billion to the military, we could take that money away from the military because they don't need it, add an extra $20 billion, and you could fund free college for everybody in the country.
We don't want people to be successful.
Unless they can afford it. By God.
And we're going to stack the deck so that crawling out of that hole is, all right, I know, we got to stop.
No, it's cool. We're ranting now. You guys, you know what we're talking about. But, just remember that... We've talked about this before. You gotta think, what's the end game? What's your logical conclusion? When you sit there and say, I want to do this, like, there should be certain issues. Okay, Social Security is a good example. People worry about Social Security going away. I understand. But the thing is, it's the most popular program we've ever created. Yeah. Nobody wants to see it go away. Healthcare, for example, should be on that same level of, it's not an issue. I don't really have to think about it. Social Security, if we can keep the politicians from raiding the fund, we'll be fine. It actually can be fine.
They want their money for themselves.
They want the money. It's a slush fund, right? Healthcare should be treated the same way. It should be a non-issue. I don't worry about...
But when you say, what's the end game? See, they'll tell you what. And they're saying, well, the end game is to help everybody. But that's just an empty phrase. It's an empty sentence.
It is. I mean, it's a platitude. Again,
and you can just say that. Yeah, you can just keep saying that. Yeah. You can just keep saying that. And
they say, we want equal access to healthcare. Well, we have equal access. I can walk in the door. I just can't afford it. And so here I am, like, sitting next to you, and I'm like going, at this point, if I had to get a job in America tomorrow, not opposed to the idea, my biggest fear would be the economic impact on us because we would have essentially no healthcare, basically no outside childcare. We would enter the United States with basically, and this is not a made up statistic. We would lose 30% of our usable income moving back to the United States. Period. Because between childcare, between healthcare, and basically essential social services. And it's not unique to Japan. It isn't just because we live in Japan.
Yeah.
So that's how bad things are, and I'm hoping we can fix it. And stop picking on the ladies. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Stop doing that. Really.
Yeah.
It's kind of shitty.
That's my official. International Women's Day comment.
Right. Whatever they want to do, let them do it. You want to be left alone, just
stop legislating the vagina. Okay.
Stop. Well, for what?
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway. All right, guys. Hope we didn't end up too much on a down note. But again, be positive, be active, go out there.
Ladies,
more power to you.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you next time.
All right. See ya.
Oh, crap. We should do a quick outro about following us and stuff. Oh, before we go.
Yeah, we're going to
popping back in. Follow us on Twitter. I am at Midnight Brewer. You are at...
Jagumbo CC.
And of course, I will post that at the end of the show. Like us on Facebook. Be a Patreon patron if you can afford it. We'd love to see you. We will be putting up special content for people who become patrons. So that kind of stuff pays for stuff like this. Microphones that we will attempt to set up in a way that we don't keep running into them. But I'm hoping that the additional sound quality makes you appreciate that. How that helps us. Make a good show for you. So anyway, we look forward to seeing you next time.
See you soon, huh?
All right, bye-bye.
Bye now.